What up, world? You already know what time it is. It's your boy, Matt Miz, the host with the most. Don't need to brag no boast. All dudes give a toast to the real folks who done paved the way in a real way for us players to play. And now, y'all know I have to come in and figure this shit out, man. Break this shit down, because, you know what I'm saying? The trial of George Floyd, you already know they're going to pull all the stops out in order to not put Derek Chauvin on trial, but they're actually putting George Floyd on trial, which is it's just kind of evil if you ask me. Well, the verdict comes back not guilty. You know what people gonna feel like: anarchy. Like we can't get no justice out of this motherfucker. So let me go ahead and give y'all some game on this whole situation. Pretty much, they're breaking down the trial right now, and they're letting y'all know that George Floyd is on trial because it's the trial of George Floyd. That's what's being put out to the public. You know what I'm saying? But now they're saying it's their Chauvin trial. Now, is it for real? I want to know, man. Y'all gotta let me know. So many bullshitters out here fucking up the game. But without further ado, I'm going straight into it, and we're gonna talk about this whole shit right here, right quick. So this is some bullshit. Let's check it out.
All right. But you testified that.
Okay. Yes.
Body weight.
Yes. My body weight. Yes.
Was on.
Okay.
So just to be clear, for the record is clear. You testified.
Yes.
Let me finish my question. You testified that when you first arrived, you observed the weight of all three officers on Mr. Floyd. Yes or no?
Yes.
But again, once you were ushered or commanded or directed, whatever term you want to use, to the curb, you again, as far as the other two officers, you were not watching who had their weight, where, or when.
Correct. I could not see the other two officers. I could see them, and they were not talking much. I could see their faces.
A lot of people were yelling.
Right.
And again, you were not paying attention to what they were saying.
Here and there.
So do you remember what the officers were talking about?
Oh, the officers? No, I have no idea. They weren't talking.
All right. You also testified that as you were observing Mr. Chauvin on George Floyd, that you formed the opinion that Mr. Chauvin's hand was in his pocket. And you described him as comfortable. Okay.
Look at this smug prick
You also testified
of a lawyer.
That you observed what you thought to be
You can tell that he
coming from
don't give a shit.
body, and you
He's the type to take
that, or you believed that to be
any type of a fucking case, man. He's a piece of shit.
I considered that it was, and took that as a sign.
Do you recall telling the agents that it was his urine?
I don't recall.
Yeah. I got one of my partners with me. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna chop it up about this whole trial because
You said that you testified.
we gotta bring some justice out this motherfucker, man. One way or the other, you know.
Trying to get the attention of
The best way to do it is if brothers chop it up about this whole situation.
Attention so much
You know what I'm saying? So I'll bring my boy in. Without further ado, my boy Alex.
And you testified that you believe that the other voices, the voices of other people,
What up, guys?
interfered with you getting there.
What up?
Yeah, it's some serious business, man. This right here, man. This ain't no joke.
Now, in terms of your
She's under a lot of pressure.
statement,
I'm pissed off at this guy because he's being a fucking smug prick. Oh man, I already messed up my monetization. But it don't matter. He's being a piece of crap. This guy, man, piece of shit, for real. Look how he's looking at her and asking her questions.
Even
and before coming into court, did you have an opportunity to review your statement at all?
I had the opportunity to
The transcript of your statement. I just want to ask you a few questions.
Because she's the EMT, right?
That Officer Powell,
no, she's the woman that actually was recording everything.
you should know better.
Oh,
Just, yeah, like she's like she does have EMT and all that too.
okay.
No,
So she's basically saying that how they abused their force and all this and that. There was like 3 grown men stepping on him and this and that. Basically, she's the one that actually recorded him.
Yeah.
The police officer on top of Floyd.
vaguely remember saying
I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of pressure on her right now.
You recall telling the agents
Exactly. And they're asking her all types of weird questions and shit.
Yeah, he's trying to switch it up.
Like, what does the other officers have to do with Derek Chauvin, you know? It's what he did. You know what I'm saying?
That's another thing that I'm kind of not happy about. How come where's the other officers that should be charged too?
the crowd is a heavy crowd.
Yeah, but they're not charged with murder, right? What they're charged with what? Accessory. They're not even charged with nothing.
I know. I'm just trying.
I don't even know, man. I'm trying to figure it out my damn self, cuz.
Do you recall after paramedics took Mr. Floyd and then you had a conversation with the firefighters that arrived, how you described the physical appearance of Mr. Floyd? You recall telling them that he...
I don't want argument. What's your grounds? Sustained. You may impeach if you wish.
All right. I know you don't want to look at your transcript, but may I approach the witness? Ms. Hanson, page 82, 85, page 11 of 20. I'm going to ask you to read the underlined portions in your head.
Let's go.
Yeah. Does that refresh your recollection of this conversation?
Yeah.
Did you describe Mr. Floyd as a small, slim man?
Overruled.
Yeah, it appeared to, with 3 grown men on top of somebody, it appeared that he was small and frail.
Okay.
What's the point of
But I
even
know that's
asking
that
her
must
that?
be
There's
true,
no pressure.
obviously.
You know what I'm saying? You're setting it up, bro. All these semantic
I was finishing my
questions.
answer.
100%. You cut that quick. That's good. There's more than that. We kind of miss a little bit more than that. A little bit. You know what I'm saying? How it began and all that. But there's a lot of questions. I was like, how you call it? It was kind of rhetorical. You know what I mean? Like mind game. You know what I mean? Like trying to play with the girl. Open my big. You know what I mean? But
You seated? We're outside the hearing of the jury, Ms. Hanson. I'm advising you, do not argue with counsel, and specifically, do not argue with the court.
Is the cameras off? Are the cameras off?
No, they are not. We are on the record.
Okay.
You will not argue with the court. You will not argue with counsel.
Mm-hmm.
They have the right to ask questions. Your job is to answer them.
I was finishing my answer.
I will determine when your answer is done.
Okay, well.
And so, do not argue with the court. Do not argue with counsel. Answer the questions. Do not volunteer information that is not requested.
Yo, what's wrong? You see
The attorneys
you
for the
see
state
this judge? She's a
have
piece of
redirect.
shit.
They can ask you questions if they
She's
think
a
that
witness to
certain
a
things are
murder.
left
You're
out.
supposed to speak with
It is
speak to
counsel's
her with
prerogative to ask you leading
respect
questions and for you to answer
no,
those and not volunteer additional
it's
information.
not that. He's paid too.
Thank you. Come back tomorrow at
No,
9:30.
he has a duty to serve the public and the people.
Do we have the person with the cell phone? Could we arrange to have that person come down? Somebody from the state to have access to that person? If you could have that person come in.
Bye.
So what do you think about that? So you're saying they're all being paid off, you think?
110%. And I believe they're being paid by the state.
Oh, damn it, man.
Because for the fact, there's a price on her head already. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not hard to tell, like, come on, she's going against the states, you know what I'm saying? And she's going against the cop, basically. So of course there's gonna be a price on her head. Even when she's answering certain questions, like she's honestly and truly though, from the beginning, there's a lot of stuff that she was saying, and that was real, that was honest, and how his lawyer was trying to play it off like
it
she didn't know what she was talking about, everything, and she was like, "You can't." She basically put him on the spot, and then he came back around, twisted and turned it on, and asked her all kinds of
from a humane perspective. He was probably speaking from a lawyer's perspective, a corporate.
Yeah, but a lawyer perspective, but like he was asking certain questions, like
he was trying to play with the words.
Yeah, basically, you know what I'm saying? You know how the judge play, you know what I mean? And I mean the lawyers play. And you could tell like she wasn't having it. And you could tell she wasn't having it.
Yeah, they were using legalese. They weren't really using words that the normal public will comprehend, right?
Individual, so
Yeah.
Why don't we go back in the chambers while we're waiting? Yes, sir.
Big bite.
Everybody doesn't say anything. It's considered a part of the state. So they go by the moniker of don't snitch either, you know?
That's a fact. That's 100%. That's 100%.
So any
What,
organization,
what do you think? What do you think? What do you think they went through right now? Like especially after when she started basically putting the cop on the lawyer on blast. You know what I'm saying? Like she was actually putting the lawyer on blast right there, and they had to cut everything down. And the judge was basically trying to side with the lawyer type of thing.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He told her like just answer the question that he's asking us. Don't like. Come on, bro. Come on, bro.
They don't want to shake up the status quo, you know?
Where's the freedom of speech though? Hey,
It's crazy. Justice for George Floyd, man.
yeah. And yo, I think your thing's a little bit delayed, eh?
No. No, yeah, 'cause I'm on YouTube.
Yeah, it's still a little bit delayed.
With the trial?
They already started it.
It started
They're definitely not allowed on a secured floor like this. I'm actually asking that you must delete the picture
Oh, I offered to do that.
and recall any places that posted it.
Oh, I haven't posted.
So why don't you come out up here and I'll give you your phone back.
Okay.
Please advise anybody who else might be thinking of doing this, not to do it.
Yeah, I will.
It's a lesson learned. We'll leave it at
Yeah.
that. Come on up and I'll give you this back.
This don't even look like a friggin' trial, man. This is
I'll take the apology and I'll attribute it to good faith.
Set up. They just doing this for the show.
Right.
I'm gonna let that post our
like television, man.
Judge Judy, real life.
Telling lies to your vision.
Yeah.
My whole thing is, what do people expect to get out of this, though? A full conviction?
That's what people want. But even with a full conviction, how good is that gonna be? You know what I mean?
He literally killed dude on camera, and there's a trial about the shit.
Which
So,
doesn't make sense at all.
what they're trying to see is
Yo, realistically, as a real man,
how they could get out of this. With
yeah,
work,
but realistically, it's like this. Put it this way.
and that's the public.
100%. Put it this way, boom. Like, if you kill somebody on the camera, there's no trial you're going through, bro. If you kill somebody on the camera, or I kill somebody on the camera, there's no trial we're going through. You know what I'm saying? There's no trial.
Exactly.
You're on the camera. The proof is already in the pudding. Everything is there. You know what I'm saying? Everything is there. Everything's in the pudding. Like, come on. What would you need a trial for? You already, like, come on. Everything is there. It shows in the camera. So you wouldn't be going to trial for me, or for you, or for anybody else. You know what I mean? That's not being paid by the state or the government, whatever the case was with this case here. But hey, you have to try to make it look somehow like they're trying to work for us. They're trying to, help their brother. Nah, but they're not. Open it.
They would know better than to get involved.
What did you think of that?
First, I was worried that he wasn't going to believe me, not let me help. And I also, that's not right. I mean, that's exactly what I should have done. There was no medical assistance on scene, and I got there, and I could have given that. That's exactly what I should have done.
So based on your training and experience and what you had seen, what did you want to do for this person on the ground?
Had they let me into the scene, I already had decided what his level of consciousness was. So I would have requested additional help. I would have wanted someone to call 911 for the paramedics and fire to come. I would have asked someone to run to the gas station and look for an AED. And I would have checked his airway. I would have been worried about a spinal cord injury because he had so much weight on his neck. I would have opened his airway to check if there were any obstructions. And I would have checked for a pulse. And when I didn't find a pulse, if that was the case, I would have started compressions. And I didn't have my bed bag, so I would have continued compressions. We don't give mouth to mouth anymore. So I would have continued compressions at a rate of 100 a minute until help arrived.
Why weren't you able to do any of that?
Because the officers didn't let me in to the scene. I also offered, in my memory, I offered to walk them through it, or told them, if he doesn't have a pulse, you need to start conditions, and that wasn't done either.
So she offered to help as well. And Philip Hamilton, if I may, this is an aspect of this scene which we've seen so much that I was not aware of, that there was someone there prepared to give medical assistance, asking to give medical assistance. Does that go to, first two questions, does that go to negligence or the depraved state of mind that these crimes require prosecutors to prove? And second, does it also suggest that she might have been able to revive him?
Hold on, pause that. Did you hear what he said?
Even more horrific.
I mean, to point one, Terry, absolutely. I mean, you have to show with respect to negligence, that there is a duty that was ultimately neglected, right? A duty of care that the person within the position who's causing the harm should have recognized and ultimately just didn't carry out. And when we have another essentially public service official who is there on the scene, who's essentially looking at the same stressful situation that Officer Chauvin was, it nevertheless shows that she, in her mind, and not just in her mind, but audibly, she, made mention of this, that ultimately he needed help. Check his pulse. She's literally going through a checklist in her mind in that stressful situation of all of the medical care and duty that is owed to Mr. Floyd in that moment. And not only is it being ignored,
Did you hear what he said at first?
Is being chastised. To say, to the extent that you were actually an EMT or firefighter, then you would know to stay out of the scene. Not at all. She actually understands and testifies to the duty of care that needed to be, shown to people in that moment. She was ready and willing to do so, but of course the officers were keeping her and the rest at bay. I think this also goes to the point of kind of undercutting where Mr. Nelson is trying to go with his defense and trying to say that this crowd was, essentially unruly. This crowd was essentially, posing some sort of danger, a threat to the police. And I think the reason why the defense tried.
You see, I can't.
Tried so hard to fight to keep her testimony out because he's coming in, he completely and totally undercuts that, this is just some, let's just be frank where he's trying to go with it, gang of people in a high crime area that are ultimately posing some sort of threat to the officer, when at the end of the day, what all of the crowd was trying to audibly say to the officers was not that we're a threat, but you, officer, are a threat to this man whose neck is under your knee, who can't breathe, who's not moving. Please check his pulse. Please ultimately do something to take care of this man. There was no threats. It was more just everybody trying to say, hey, help this man. And to the extent that you have an EMT there that has come in and testified to that issue as well, it is very damaging to the defense's case, particularly in regards to that thread that the defense is trying to make, that, the officers ultimately were distracted by virtue of a threatening crowd. The crowd, I think, if I'm the prosecution, why I'm happy with, Ms. Hanson testifying, is that it's being shown that there was no threat, that this was a crowd that was concerned. This was a crowd that was trying to ultimately get somebody, particularly the officers, to help Mr. Floyd, and nobody did so. So I think in that regard, yes, it does go to the element of negligence, but also in many respects, it undercuts, some of where the defense is trying to go in terms of, trying to beat the prosecution in regards to, not being able to show not being able to meet their case by, reasonable doubt.
And that brings us right to, let's go to that moment in an aggressive cross-examination of EMT Genevieve Hansen. Derek Chauvin's lawyer, Eric Nelson, went after her about her demeanor and how, as Philip Hamilton was just telling us, it may have seemed threatening that group of bystanders there that we see again and again standing around trying to intervene asking some kind of threat.
Bro, I don't even know what's wrong with this guy. He's talking for
Eric
Gazy
Nelson
too.
tried to confront Genevieve Hansen on that score.
Well, they have to talk like that in the.
No. Don't do that. They don't have to talk like that. Don't do that.
You don't think so?
Don't do that. Did you hear what he just said? He said, "Oh, because the feds might have probably been like they were under a lot of pressure, so they weren't trying to let Hertz come and help him." Come on, bro. The man was sitting down and he had his knee on his neck with his hand in his pocket, like chilling. Come on.
True.
Come on, bro. Frustrated, I'm not sure is the word I would use.
Angry?
More desperate.
But I think the
Called the officers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got quite angry after Mr. Floyd was loaded into the ambulance, and there was no point in trying to reason with them anymore because they had just killed somebody.
Well, that didn't go particularly well, it seems, for defense lawyer Eric Nelson. And let me go to Kristen on this score.
You know why they're mad at that white girl? I'm gonna tell you why right now.
Why?
That white girl is off code.
Yeah, from their perspective, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? She was supposed to say that, oh, she messed up. She don't remember what happened, and she wasn't supposed to flip it on them like that. But that white girl is off code, and the reason why she's off code is because she's a normal human being. And
yes, and she's under a lot of pressure too, because she's gonna.
Exactly, you know?
And at the end of the day, forget the pressure on lives, because you're a human being, bro. If you're a right human being, in the right mind state, you know what I'm saying?
And these white folks that follow white supremacy and push that agenda, they're all in cahoots. So when they see her and acting like that, they, you know what I'm saying? They want to disrespect her. You know, they want to demonize her. They want to act like she doesn't know what she's talking about. Check it out.
Yeah, I would have to agree. That is not working at all, Terry. I saw, and I believe a lot of my colleagues saw as well, and I think what the jury saw was heart-wrenching testimony of impassioned bystanders who are showing an emotional element, not only to the video that the whole nation cried for, but also kind of showing that they are blaming themselves. They're feeling like powerless. The witness said he felt like she was failing.
Yo, let me come back in a bit, all right? 1 second.
The things that Genevieve Hansen could have done and how she blames herself. But I think one of the things that is really important and why I think Hansen's cross-examination went so poorly for defense is because she was there for 4 minutes. And during that 4 minutes, she not only undercut the defense, as Philip had pointed out, but in addition to that, she showed that, in fact, the officers were not distracted and actually had a coherent conversation with her, telling her, hey, if you're a paramedic, you know better than to get in their way. So stand back. That's a coherent conversation showing that, in fact, officer wasn't quite distracted and could have listened to the pleas and cries of the bystanders. In addition to that, all of the things that she had mentioned, just all about rendering care. I think it's really important for Hansen's testimony to point out she was there 4 minutes. 1 minute of that, he lay limp, not moving, not able to breathe, right? 20 seconds of that, the paramedic was checking checking his pulse. And throughout the entirety of that minute and 20 seconds, right, Chauvin's knee was digging into Mr. Floyd's neck. I think it was also really powerful testimony that Hansen had testified that on 1 of 5 occasions she has seen this very same scene, but yet she cried and emoted in such a negative way because she had just seen what she viewed as a murder. And so I didn't think it went very well for defense at all, and would agree that prosecution started strong and ended strong.
Well, and let me go to Ken Moten again on this. I'm not quite sure what Eric Nelson was trying to achieve in this cross-examination. At one point, he said, well, as a firefighter, you would appreciate if people were coming and criticizing your work while you're in the middle of fighting a fire. Well, I guess the analogy from the prosecution's point of view is that she wasn't just letting a house burn down or wasn't lighting a house on fire, and that is what she would have thought was happening. Something wrong was happening in her judgment with George Floyd there. Tell me about Eric Nelson. What, from your perspective, he's trying to accomplish with these kinds of combative cross-examinations? I'm not quite sure what he's getting at.
What we've seen from Eric Nelson over the course of the past couple of days with all of these witnesses is, you're not a police officer. That's the line of questioning we've been seeing from Eric Nelson. And today, I always point, Terry, to the line of questioning here. And so he started off immediately with Ms. Hansen with, you've had 2 years of as a firefighter. He touched on her training to become a firefighter and said, you're trained to fight fires. You're not trained to be a police officer. And you touched on it there. When you go to a scene, does anyone interfere with your work? Does anyone distract you? Would you be distracted fighting fires if someone was yelling at you, if someone was trying to distract you to get your attention? And she essentially said, no, nothing would distract me from doing my job. She was adamant. She was pretty stern. And she was pretty dead on in her explanation of what she would do and what she wanted to do.
I'll be back right away in 2 minutes.
And so that line of questioning is extremely important because we've seen it with how we started the day with Donald Williams with, well, you're not a police officer, or how do you know about those certain chokeholds or things like that, or how would you know if that chokehold was having an impact on George Floyd and his body? So that's the line of questioning that we've seen from Eric Nelson, and we expect to see more of that line of questioning. And it's pretty interesting that he's taking that route because, Terry, remember during jury selection, what these potential jurors were asked? They were asked, do you have a respect for law enforcement? Well, some could also say, overall, do you have a respect for public service? Who's also a public servant? Firefighters. And that's what makes Ms. Hansen so strong.
She was indeed. Thanks, Ken. Let me go to Philip Hamilton on this question of what Eric Nelson may be trying to achieve. Perhaps, and perhaps you can help us, is he looking for to establish certain things in evidence that will then allow him to argue that police officers are granted a great deal of leeway, a great deal of power on the streets because they're there to keep streets safe. And are there aspects of what he's trying to establish, the threat that they might feel, their urgent need to put somebody under custody who may have been resisting arrest? Is he looking to find a way to make his defense with these witnesses under law?
He is, and in many respects, Terry, he's taking the boilerplate approach that we have seen throughout the course of, I would say, the last 7 or 8 years with a lot of these police officer-related prosecutions. I think back to the Eric Garner situation, which ultimately didn't go to trial. But even thinking through, some of the defenses that were already there before it even made it to the grand jury stage, where ultimately, it didn't move forward. This is a boilerplate defense that Nelson is playing, but this is not a boilerplate case, correct? Like, we have seen this case kind of have just an outrage that we unfortunately did not see with a lot of those preceding cases. And because this case is so uniquely different, you can't play this case the way that generally you can, in the sense of saying that law enforcement, by nature of the dangerousness of their job, should have the leeway to be able to make these split-second decisions, right? Which is what we've generally seen in the cases that precede this one. But this one is not a split-second case. And where Jerry Blackwell did so well in his opening statement yesterday was playing that theme that will play throughout the course of the rest of this case. 9 minutes and 29 seconds. There is no split-second decision-making. So to try to play this case on the boilerplate facts that generally we have seen kind of apply to these cases where officers will say at least are making decisions in time that is faster than what occurred here, you can't really play that. And the way that he is playing it, so kind of standard format, is taking a lot of the emotion out of the matter, which I understand it's probably not the defense's strong point to play this case emotionally and to ultimately try to downplay the emotions. But at the same time, you can't take the general kind of boilerplate standard of not acknowledging any emotion. And what we see Nelson doing throughout the course of his opening statement, throughout the course of his cross, is not just playing down the emotion and acknowledging the fact that, look, unfortunately, a man died, right? And unfortunately, a man died after my client's knee was on the back of his neck. Even if I'm not necessarily saying that the cause of his death, you at some point have to acknowledge the tragedy that happened here. And the way that Nelson kind of went forth in his cross examinations today, getting a bit combative with some of the witnesses, not necessarily because they were doing anything, I would say, combative. Nelson wasn't asking tight questions. When you cross-examine a witness, your questions have to be tight. That's trial strategy 101 for any trial attorney. And he's asking these kind of loosey-goosey questions that lead to these more open-ended responses that are damaging for his client and damaging for his case. And I think what ultimately happened today, he just had a bad day. I think that he was trying ultimately to establish the fact that, again, the officers were distracted by the threat, that, again, there were these things that were going on prior to the filming that began, the incident, but that it got lost in a lot of kind of these sometimes unnecessary fights that he was having with the witnesses. And in many respects, the reason that he was fighting them was trying to downplay the experience that they had to go through at the hands of
Come. You want me to bring him outside or something?
Daddy, did you bring me outside? Did you bring me outside? Come on, Daddy. You've been begging.
Don't have a water softener or any water filtration system. Oh look, well, what do you know? Completely white. No, not
Daddy, could you bring Joe outside? In the front? In the front with you? Just in the front, walking.
I can see y'all look at that turnover.
They came in the front.
You won't lose.
He picked me up.